Tales of Ironroth, Missing in Kalimdor. Written by Kaiser. The silence. The miserable and ever-looming silence was the worst part of being a soldier. To anxiously wait for the call to arms and clashing of steel that one can only hope will lead to the peace they are fighting so hard for. One can only hope to combat the dreadful silence with memories of more pleasant times and moments of brief distraction. Deep within the bowels of a tugboat that has spent the past several days traveling across the oceans of Azeroth along less populated routes, the silence held complete sway. Only the sounds of creaking wood and rumbling goblin engineering were combated within the poorly lit cargo hold. Illuminated by oil lanterns, the hold's contents would be seen with it mostly containing a few barrels of preserved rations and empty crates to appear as if it truly was transporting items of value. Within this poorly lit hold, John J. Keeshan quietly sat with his back against the wall. Here he has been since they had set off with only the rare occasion topside to take over for his transporter when night fell. By him rested his weapons of choice, which he has spent the past couple days tending to prepare for the task ahead of him. His bow, a quiver stocked with arrows, twin daggers, and a rifle with enough ammunition to last him if this operation turns chaotic. Here, Keeshan has remained. Just him, the silence, and his thoughts which recited the past week to him again and again, all to drive him forward for what is to come next. When Keeshan had departed from Stormwind, it had only been a week since the news of the siege of Orgrimmar's outcome arrived. King Varian Wren and countless other aligned soldiers had fallen during the siege in the hopes of putting down the mad dog that was War Chief Garrosh Hellscream. Stormwind mourns for its king and the warriors of the Alliance who will not return home to their loved ones. As the people mourn, the House of Nobles and military leaders of Stormwind hold council within Stormwind Keep. Acting Regent Gin Greymane of Gilneas would lead these discussions personally to keep the balance. What was discussed would not reach the ears of the common folk, Keeshan and other soldiers of Stormwind included. There was only one man who would offer Keeshan insight into these meetings. That man was Mathias Shaw, head of SI-7. Mathias has been beyond an asset to Stormwind and the Alliance as a whole, with his spy network being instrumental to keeping a steady supply of reports coming in on Horde operations. What happened during the siege, though, was far from anyone's ability to predict. With the conclusion of another meeting with the House of Nobles, Mathias would depart from Stormwind Keep and travel down its stone steps. It would not take him long to spot Keeshan leaned against a stone wall awaiting him. Arms crossed, Keeshan stared into the void with his eyes soon laying upon Mathias, who made his way down the steps and towards him. Upon reaching him, Mathias would offer only a simple nod towards the veteran of Bravo Company.
John?
Mathias? Anything of worth discussed today?
Sadly, no. Just the usual bloody politicking involving the House of Nobles, of course. You know how much they enjoy enforcing it on their subjects.
Typical.
The moment we feel we are getting a step closer to deciding our next move, the House of Nobles pushes the whole situation to some grand debate on resources and priorities. There was one topic that was discussed, that being intervention to search for survivors. There are still so many of our men unaccounted for. And yet again, the House of Nobles prevents us from forming a solid course of action. Any search for possible survivors are put on halt for the time being.
Their indecisiveness is going to get our men killed.
I know. Our hands are tied, though, until those on high choose our course of action.
Silence would fill the air between them. Mathias rested his hands behind his back while Keeshan would avert his gaze from the spy master as his mind raced with thoughts on the situation. These thoughts would slowly evolve into a question that has been prying at him since the news of the siege's outcome reached Stormwind.
What of Marshal Troteman?
Mathias's gaze would lower to the ground when asked this question. Marshal Troteman and Keeshan have history with one another. Two of the last remaining members of Bravo Company and veterans of more campaigns than they can count. Both men and their fallen comrades had done much for the Alliance. Mathias could not help but hold some hesitation in his words as he forces them out in a calculating tone.
There has been no word of the Marshal's status. We are unsure whether he is still alive or not.
Silence yet again ruled the air. Keeshan kept his gaze averted from Mathias, as it would not be long till the veteran would remove himself from the wall he leaned against and depart. Not another word would be shared between the two at that moment, as Keeshan disappeared into the streets of Stormwind. That night still plays so vividly within Keeshan's mind. Darkness overtook Stormwind with its streets being nearly bare of life. Keeshan had full intentions to use this as a cover to make his departure from the city. Leaving the temporary residence he had made his home while in Stormwind, Keeshan was fully equipped for war as a one-man army. He knew what he had to do, and could not wait any longer. Traveling down the cobblestone streets of Stormwind, Keeshan would feel a shadow follow after him. This shadow took the form of Mathias Shaw, who traveled within the darkness of the night as naturally as any other predator. Whether Keeshan knew he was being followed or not, it would not be long till Mathias made his presence known when Keeshan was about to pass through the threshold of Stormwind's gate.
Going somewhere, Keeshan?
Halting in his steps, Keeshan stood his ground where he had stopped. He did not look towards Mathias at first, as he held a stubborn vision of the task he was undertaking.
You know damn well where I'm going. I'm not gonna sit around while every second that passes puts the lives of innocent men at stake.
I know, and I'm not going to stop you. This does not mean, however, I will stand by and allow you to do this on your own.
Turning to Mathias, Keeshan would see the spy master approach and soon offer him two items. A small sheet of paper with a series of numbers scribbled upon it, and a scroll tightly held by a string. Both would be presented to Keeshan, a claim which he would slowly do.
Here are coordinates to a ship just north of Booty Bay. Agent Renzik currently mans it and will transport you to Kalimdor. That scroll is a recent report by SI-7 agents in Kalimdor concerning sightings of captured Alliance soldiers. We believe that they're being held at what remains of Northwatch hold.
Storing these items into a satchel he wore, Keeshan was ready to depart, but Mathias would speak once again.
One last thing, Keeshan.
Looking towards Mathias, the next words Keeshan would hear would remain ingrained within his mind and fuel the flames that push him forward into this operation. These words are what will drive him for all that is to come.
Bring our men home.
With these words still echoing in his mind, Keeshan was suddenly forced out of his thoughts. Both he and the silence would be disturbed at a sudden knocking upon the hatch that led topside onto the deck.
Hey, Keeshan, wake up! We're approaching the coast.
With not another word offered by the goblin agent, Keeshan would slowly rise to his feet. He would feel his bones crack and his muscles stretch as he stood up. Keeshan would begin a brief ritual to prepare himself for the operation ahead. Slinging his bow and rifle onto his back and stashing his daggers onto his belt, Keeshan would perform the final piece of this preparation by tying his bandana upon his head. Tightening the red fabric across his forehead, Keeshan would be fully equipped for what was next. It was time to get to work. Upon climbing to above deck, Keeshan would feel the thick and humid air of the approaching swampland lick at his exposed flesh. In the distance, a coastline of Dustwallow Marsh was slowly coming into clearer view, with the fumes and mists that radiated from its waters creating a shroud, preventing Keeshan from viewing any further from where he was. Just beyond the canopies of the marsh's wildness, Keeshan could see the setting sun beginning to fade into the west. At the helm of this vessel, Agent Renzik stood and kept it on course. Adorned in unsuspecting attire, Renzik easily portrayed the persona of a goblin merchant, which he has done many times before when previously assigned to Kalimdor. Not too far from him would lie a rifle that he has kept close during this trip in case of pirates or other unsavory opportunists.
This is as far as I can take you, Keeshan. Our patrol ship's been lurking around these waters. Any further and we'd be in a heap of trouble.
Offering only a simple nod, Keeshan kept his focus on the coast as the ship slowly halted.
Let's go over this plan one last time, just so we're on the same page. Don't want any mishaps, you know.
I'll swim to shore, keep my head down, and make my way to the border leading into the Barrens. I'll travel to Northwatch Hold, and, if the reports are true, free the prisoners within.
And if it's not?
Then I'll strangle the first orc I can get my hands on until I get what I want.
Don't get too distracted. You got until dawn to reach Ratchet, where I'll be waiting for you. Patrol ships will be performing a change of the guard, and our window of escape is short. Too short. We miss this opening, we can kiss leaving Kalimdor alive goodbye.
I could care less about my own life. The lives of these men and Marshal Troteman is all that matters.
Well then, Godspeed, Keeshan.
Without another word, Renzik would turn away from Keeshan, who would soon begin to climb over the railing of the ship. Without hesitation, Keeshan would dive in and begin to swim towards the shore as he entered the point of no return. Upon reaching the shore of Dustwallow Marsh, Keeshan would offer one final look towards the ship as it began to sail off. Most likely Renzik will wait until the right opportunity to dock in Ratchet, where he will await Keeshan and any prisoners he discovers. Turning back to the mainland, Keeshan would not waste another moment as he starts his journey and enters the dense marshland. Night would set across Dustwallow Marsh, the distant memory of the setting sun being long forgotten as the buzzing of insects and stench of swamp water assaulted Keeshan as he pushed forward. He was no stranger to miserable places like this. His drive was what kept him focused away from the discomfort as he trudged through the muddy waters. Keeshan followed along deteriorated roads and makeshift paths, staying just off the side of them to prevent being easily spotted. The swamp was alive with creatures from the hissing of snakes to frogs that lively sang in harmony with buzzing insects. Keeshan would carefully pass by the nesting grounds of a local crocodile, with him keeping his distance to prevent showing himself as a threat to both it and its unhatched brood. The one sign of civilization within this marshland would be the distant flickering of torchlight that would faintly be seen within the mist. Scattered groups of horde soldiers performed patrols along the makeshift paths, keeping watch and performing their daily duty. One such group would travel along the path that Keeshan followed, forcing him to duck into the murky waters around him. The patrol's torchlight would cast out the darkness of the night as they passed, completely unaware of the man submerged just off the side of the path they walked. When they had finally passed and reached a distance far enough to avoid detection, Keeshan would slowly rise from the water, which ran down his hair and body, with blunt patches of mud staining part of his flesh. Following the patrol's route, Keeshan would be led towards the northern parts of Dustwallow and close to the border territory that divided it and the Barrens. Right upon the route Keeshan had envisioned taking to enter the Barrens, he would spot the lone tower known as North Point. Once one of the few Alliance outposts that existed within eastern Kalimdor, it was now under the dominion of the Horde. In the darkness, Keeshan would begin to take count of those present within the outpost. 2 Horde soldiers kept guard outside the tower, while one stationed himself at the very top of the tower with a bow. The final 3 remained within the tower itself. One appeared to be a dark shaman, who was most likely the closest thing to a commander here for the outpost. Keeshan would observe them, watching their every move as something began to grow within him. Maybe it was the bloodlust that has always haunted Keeshan, or it was simply the desire to avenge the lives of those lost in the siege. It did not matter which it was. To Keeshan, this was war, with him being no stranger to killing. He felt every fiber of his being demanded him to action swiftly and carve secure his path to Northwatch. Spotting a horde soldier breaking off from North Point, Keeshan would see his opportunity to strike. Placing one of his daggers between his teeth, Keeshan would dive into the marsh water and slowly lurk towards the horde soldier. The soldier in question had traveled to the edge of the water, where he would begin to relieve himself. Completely unaware of his presence, Keeshan would rise from the water and grab a hold of the soldier by his shirt before quickly pulling him into the water to slit his throat in one swift stroke. Leaving the body behind, Keeshan would make his approach towards North Point. Crawling through the muck and tall grass, Keeshan would draw his bow and ready an arrow within it. Without hesitation, he would release it to strike a watchman at the top of the tower, with an aiming true and striking him within his neck. Followed by him, another soldier standing guard at the entrance would be struck by another arrow and brought down silently. Remaining in the shadows, Keeshan would swiftly move towards the North Point and move to its entrance. Inside the tower, the final 3 horde sentries sat around a small wooden table. They indulged in salted pork and other preserved goods that had not molded away or spoiled thanks to the marshland, while laughing and sharing war stories to one another. The only one not to fully participate would be the dark shaman, who sat quietly and simply listened to his comrades entertain themselves. It would be this lack of distraction that would allow the dark shaman to react to the intrusion that would be soon upon them. In the corner of their eye, they would witness a small cylindrical object be tossed through the entrance of the tower. A glass vial whose contents, a silvery liquid, glistened faintly before soon colliding with the stone ground and smashing against it. In the wake of its destruction, the vial would release a thick smoke which would swiftly fill the tower and cloud the vision of the 3 horde sentries. With this smoke acting as a distraction, Keeshan would draw both his daggers and rush into the tower to strike. With agile and violent motions, Keeshan would plunge one dagger into the chest of one of the sentries while slicing the other's throat with his second dagger. Blood would spill against the stone ground as brief cries of pain filled the night air, before swiftly being silenced. The call for combat now upon him, the dark shaman would channel into the elements and call upon the power of wind. Using his hands to create an outward motion, the dark shaman would use the wind around him to clear the room of smoke. All would be revealed to him as his eyes would soon lock upon the bloodied corpses of his allies and the human who was now charging directly at him. Keeshan would have a proper challenge present itself to him. As he charged toward the dark shaman, the orc once again called upon the elements to serve him. Holding their ground, the shaman would uproot loose bricks on the floor of the tower and send them flying towards Keeshan. One after another would strike Keeshan, with him feeling each impact bruise against his body and scratch at his flesh. One would strike at his lower jaw and cut along his lower lip before slamming into the wall behind him. Forced onto the defensive, Keeshan would flip over the table within the tower and take cover behind it. Pinned down, Keeshan would plan out his next move. He would witness the dark shaman's relentless assault and use his focus upon it against him. Keeshan would suddenly press his feet against the bottom of the table and kick it forward towards the shaman, who braced himself as he ends his assault to stop it from knocking him over. This distraction would allow Keeshan to fill in the gap between him and the shaman, with the human lunging at him like a strangle-thorn jungle cat upon its prey. Forcing the shaman down against the harsh stone ground, instinct would take control as Keeshan struggled against the orc, with his arms soon locking around his throat. Squeezing hard and keeping him pinned, Keeshan would feel the shaman squirm within his hold with each second that passed, resulting in the orc's strength fading. With just a few weak kicks and bucks against Keeshan, the shaman would soon succumb and slowly grow limp within Keeshan's hold. The silence that followed the clash was almost completely dominant over the moment. It was only denied this opportunity by Keeshan's breathing and the distant sounds of wildlife just outside the tower. Slowly, Keeshan would release his grip on the shaman, letting them fall to the side as the human rose back to his feet. Retrieving his daggers and the bodies of the sentries he left them within, Keeshan would not offer another glance to the scene he had created as he departed from North Point. With the route clear and watchful eyes eliminated, Keeshan would return to his mission and make his way towards the mountains dividing the Dustwallow marsh and the Barrens. The brawl at North Point had only invigorated his resolve. Over the rocky terrain, Keeshan would climb and soon see his objective in sight. The faint lights of Northwatch Hold would be seen and his route clear to him. Northwatch Hold was far from the once impressive Alliance stronghold that stood defiant against the Horde. Its once impressive walls had crumbled, and its soil left burned by the subjugated molten giants sent by the Horde to destroy it. It was now nothing more than a ruin, surrounded by scattered Horde encampments who waited until the embers of its destruction had cooled before picking it apart, like a corpse. Faint torchlight illuminated from the encampments and patrolling Horde grunts standing guard over Northwatch. The air was silent, with none the wiser of Keeshan's steady approach. At its entrance, 2 guards held watch over the only way into the ruin. Both would be of little use to Keeshan. Finding the perfect opportunity, Keeshan would drag one into the shadows to dispose of before moving for the next, before they could even notice their comrade was missing. From one of their bodies, Keeshan would retrieve a set of keys which he would strap to his belt. With haste in his steps, Keeshan would enter Northwatch Hold with him not needing to venture too far before he came across what he was searching for. The sight that Keeshan would witness would send a sense of disgust through his very being as he sees the cruelty of Garrosh's Horde on display. Before him, Keeshan would see the huddled masses of Alliance soldiers stuffed away in a pen, no different from what a boar would be kept. A muddy hole of grime and filth that was no place for any sentient being. Sunken faces would look to Keeshan, their bodies malnourished and scarred from beating by their captors. Among the soldiers of the Alliance, members of the Darkspear Rebellion would also be captive, with their treatment being no different to their fellow prisoners. Without hesitation, Keeshan would retrieve the keys he took and use them to unlock the pen gate wide. Entering the pen, Keeshan would look to the prisoners who would swiftly rise to their feet and look to their savior. The rattling of chains would be clear to hear as each man was bound to one another by shackles. One of these men would make his approach, slow but determined even in his weakened state, with those bound to him following. Raising his hand to offer a salute, the man would not hesitate to address himself to Keeshan.
Quartermaster Ben Tolt of the Stormwind Seawolves, sir. Are you here to get us out of this mess?
I am. Are there any more of you?
I am unsure. We've been kept here since the siege, mining out anything for the orc bastards to repurpose. For all we know, we may be all that's left from the siege.
What of Marshal Troteman? Do you know what happened to him?
Hesitation would fill Ben. His stoic and professional stance was weakening as he tried to remain dutiful before his savior. Speaking proudly, he would recite what had happened to the Marshal.
It is thanks to him that me and my men are still alive. When the order to retreat was given, the Marshal held the line for me and my men to flee into the Barrens. He fought valiantly, but the enemy numbers were far too much. I fear our captivity has put the Marshal's efforts in vain.
A dreadful silence would fill the air between Ben and Keeshan for a brief moment. Keeshan could not properly express what he was feeling. Sorrow? Regret? No matter what it was, he felt a sense of failure to protect one of his comrades in arms. Troteman was a good man and put all his faith in the Keeshan as they served side by side against greater odds. With Troteman gone, Keeshan was all that was left of Bravo Company. Keeshan, forcing himself out of his thoughts and reorganizing, would return his sights to Ben. Keeshan would push the keys into Ben's hands.
Start unshackling your men. We need to get moving.
While obeying Keeshan's orders, Ben would hand off the keys to another soldier before speaking out.
I am sorry, sir, but we cannot leave unless we take the rebels with us. They're in the same situation as us, and it is only just to get them out of here.
They'll only slow us down and make us a larger target.
This is not up for debate, sir. Their fate is going to be the same as ours one way or another, whether that be freedom or the sword.
The sound of shackles falling to the ground would lightly cast out the silence of the night as each soldier, alliance, and rebel sets one another free, with Keeshan observing this. Without another word, Keeshan would silently accept Ben's demand. Moving to where he hit the bodies of the two horde guards, he would claim their weapons and toss them over to Ben along with his daggers. Ben would arm himself and 3 others as Keeshan begins to take point with his bow and arrow. Signaling for the prisoners to follow his trail closely, Keeshan would maneuver them out of Northwatch hold and along the boundaries of the horde encampments. When their path became blocked by lone horde soldiers, Keeshan would not hesitate to dispatch them with a well-placed arrow before hiding away their bodies. Reaching the outskirts of the encampment with Northwatch hold behind him, all had appeared to have gone according to plan. His hope of a quiet escape would be halted by the distant sound of a war song raider's horn casting out the silence of the night. Keeshan's actions in North Point have caught up, and he knew this, placing blame upon his bloodlust, which has now risked this whole operation. Without hesitation, Keeshan would begin a rush towards the wilderness, with him calling out to the prisoners to follow him.
They're on to us! Get moving now!
Determination filled Keeshan. The desire to ensure these men do not die on his watch was what drove him as he sprinted across the plains of the southern barrens. Him and the prisoners he escorted were en route to Ratchet, with the clock constantly ticking over them. It was approaching the waning hours of the night, with Keeshan's eyes constantly looking to the east to keep track of the rising sun that was destined to appear in only a few hours. The group would quicken their pace, treading across the savannah and ducking within tall grass, only for brief moments to catch their breath. Many of the prisoners struggled with their aching wounds and weakened bodies fighting against them. These brief moments went as fast as they came, with every man there feeling the looming presence of the horde. Search parties were bound to come after them, with Keeshan forcing men back onto their feet to return to their route. Their fears would not take long to become reality. The distant howls of dire wolves would echo across the savannah, with their thunderous charge sending vibrations through the earth. Keeshan need only look behind him to see the forming dust cloud of his pursuers that slowly grew closer. In a matter of moments, 4 orc raiders would be upon them and charging rapidly upon the back of their dire wolves. Keeshan and those of the prisoners that were armed ready to defend themselves. The raiders would soon be upon them, with Keeshan delivering the first blow against their attackers by dismounting one of them with a well-placed arrow. Joined by other prisoners, Ben would hold his ground with an axe in his hands, which he would soon swing at a charging raider. The head of the axe would lodge itself into the orc's armor and force them from the back of their mount, which soon would be dealt with by a club-wielding tauren who would swing hard at the rabid beast and send it flying several feet away. This raider would not last long after this attack, with them being put down by Keeshan. Ben, rushing to the injured troll, would move to support him and get him back on his feet to carry him the rest of the way. This was not to be the last attack, and everyone knew this as the group began to quicken their pace and sprint towards the north.
Keep moving! Get to Ratchet, I'll cover you!
Barking out these orders, Keeshan would position himself behind the group. Putting his bow away, Keeshan would draw his rifle and ready it for the possibility of another search party, which soon became true. Lead would fly through the air, and gun smoke would bloom from Keeshan's rifle as he defended the group and kept their pursuers at bay. With any luck, freedom was just a couple miles away. The group's hunters were relentless. One right after the other, Orc raiders would search for them and rush their position only to be shot down by Keeshan as the prisoners continued to mad dash towards the coastal town of Ratchet. In the corner of his eye, Keeshan would see the darkness of the eastern horizon start to morph into the glow of the dawn. They only had a little bit of time left with Ratchet being so close. Halting once again to catch their breath, the group would try to reorganize themselves as their aching bones and muscles screamed in agony from the amount of willpower they have had to use to keep going. Ben, having guided his fellow prisoners, would slowly lay the troll he had been supporting down onto the ground to tend to his wound. Tearing off his own shirt sleeve to use as a makeshift bandage, Ben would attempt to stop the bleeding. Sweat and blood glistened upon Keeshan's flesh as he approached Ben and made the quartermaster return his focus onto him. Determination filled Keeshan's eyes, with Ben seeing this fully as he listened to his superior speak.
Listen closely. Waiting at the docks will be a vessel manned by an agent of SI-7. Their name is Renzik. You're to get your men to him and get the hell off this continent whether I'm with you or not.
Without you? What do you mean?
I'm gonna stay behind and buy you all some time. My mission was to get you men out of here and back home. What happens to me doesn't matter.
Surely you can't be serious, sir. We can't simply leave you behind.
Follow my orders, Quartermaster. This is my choice alone. Besides, I plan on taking as many of these bastards as I can to the grave with me.
Before Ben could attempt to try and convince Keeshan to seek reason, Keeshan would force him back towards the troll to pick him back up and get ready to start moving once again. The route to Ratchet was clear. The group would be able to begin making their descent down to the coastal town, while Keeshan would claim a sniper position upon the hill overlooking both the road and town. Loading his rifle, Keeshan readied for the worst. In the group's wake, a trail of corpses would be followed by horde soldiers, numbering in dozens who would soon begin their march towards Ratchet. Some would be able to easily spot the prisoners and attempt to pursue only to be shot down. The high-pitched whistle of lead flying would be heard as horde soldiers would fall one after the other. From his vantage point, Keeshan would hail down gunfire, which would cause the orcs to duck for cover and attempt to spot Keeshan's position. In Ratchet, the town was completely silent with the exception of distant gunfire, which would echo throughout the streets, with locals staying inside their homes to wait out the sudden combat. Rushing for the docks, Ben and the prisoners would see waiting for them was a single vessel. Upon its deck, Renzik stood, rifle in hand and waving his hand towards the group to draw their attention, the goblin ready for the worst if Keeshan is unable to hold the line.
Come on, hurry and haul ass!
The sun was beginning to slowly rise, and with it the darkness of the night began to be forced back. The cover it once provided would begin to disappear, and Keeshan's position would become easier to spot, with horde soldiers already attempting to rush him. Holding his ground, Keeshan would open fire at the charging orcs with every round sent intended to kill. Even as the final round was fired, Keeshan would still uphold his defense. Wielding his rifle as a club, Keeshan would hold the hill he stood upon and dare any orc to come and challenge him. Smashing his rifle against the jaw of one orc before slamming it down against the head of another, Keeshan readied for the next, only to be struck by an arrow to the side, which he would promptly tug out and use as a weapon all on its own to soon be lodged into the flesh of another charging orc. Keeshan knew that this was going to be his end. He has served the Alliance for so many years and was ready to perform one final duty to it by holding the line. Keeshan was more than ready to paint this hill in the blood of the Horde till his own mortal form can no longer continue. As the sun finally rose over the shores of eastern Kalimdor, Renzik and his ship would be long gone from Ratchet's docks. Sailing out into the sea, the vessel would quickly gain distance from the mainland. While most of the prisoners went below deck, Ben remained topside. Standing at the helm of the vessel beside Renzik, he would look back at the coast and witness the distant figure of Keeshan slowly disappear. Ben had no words for what he was witnessing, as yet again a brave man sacrifices himself so he and his men can survive. There Keeshan stood, upon a hill surrounded by warriors of the Horde and defiantly holding out against them. A symbol of Bravo Company's ferocity, which will echo on in this moment.